Call to order the December workshop for the Mayor and City Council for the City of Taneytown. I ask that Councilman Hale lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman.
You're welcome.
The records reflect that all council members are present and accounted for. First, we'll start with a review of the minutes for the November 4th regular meeting and the November 18th closed session. Is there any additions or corrections to the minutes? All right, hearing none, they'll both be up for approval Monday evening. Next, we'll have a public hearing. I will open that up at this time regarding the Meads Crossing Development Rights and Responsibilities Agreement, as we lovingly refer to it as the DARA. Is there any comment from the public regarding Meads Crossing DARA amendments? All right, that will remain open for a short time if anyone decides to speak. We'll move into public comment pertaining to non-agenda items. Anything you don't see on this list, you are welcome to speak about at this time. Anyone like to speak?
Good evening, everyone. Chris Tillman, the president of the Taneytown Chamber of Commerce, speaking for the Chamber of Commerce. We don't have a specific issue at this time, and we're just kind of bringing this up for people to think about in terms of the downtown businesses and the EDUs and costs for for businesses to hook up. It's come to my attention that there have been some issues in the past and things that haven't happened because of the cost of the EDUs, it's just something that I think is going to need to be addressed. Specifically for businesses in the downtown area, if such matters come up. I'm not saying that there is anything. I know that we have buildings for sale downtown. There are things going on in those sales right now, and we don't want something like that to shoot down someone possibly bringing a business into town. So just something to think about, something to look forward and carry forward. When the time becomes appropriate, and I just want that thought to kind of get up into people's minds.
Okay, thank you for that. Let me ask Mr. Weepick a question regarding that. Businesses moving into an existing location, there is not a hookup fee associated, is that correct?
That's correct. Where that would come into play would be if the proposed use is that of a higher demand than the current use.
Correct.
So if you have a restaurant space and somebody's putting a new restaurant in that same space, it's kind of a wash. If somebody had a retail store that doesn't use a whole lot of water and somebody, say, wanted to put a restaurant in that space, then they would have to be allocated additional EDUs of capacity.
Right.
So that's why several years ago we passed the revitalization ordinance that includes amortization of the EDU fees so that you can spread that $12,900 out over a 10-year period to try to make it more palatable for a business.
Let me just, I want to carry, because one of the two examples that I do know of that were related back to me is that someone, before the Bollingers bought the Model Steam Bakery building, someone was talking about buying that, opening a restaurant there, and wanted to do apartments above it. And if you charge a $13,000 EDU, even if you're amortizing it over 10 years, that's $1,300 a year. That's $100 a month that you would have to add to somebody's rent to cover that EDU, and it just wiped out the viability of the proposal. Another one that I know of is the little gym downtown, right across the street from us. He'd like to have a shower there. I asked him one time, I said, why don't you put a shower in here? He said, well, the city won't let me do it unless I pay $4,000 for a water fee. That's ridiculous. And I know that because I've talked to people who don't go to that gym because he doesn't have a shower there. So that's the kind of thing that we need to be a little bit more forward thinking about.
Okay, well, thank you for your comments. Anyone else have any additional comments they wish to make this evening on non-agenda items? All right, hearing none, I'll ask the council if they have any conflicts of interest on items that appear on the agenda this evening.
No, sir.
No, sir.
All right. Last chance to the public regarding the Meads Crossing DARA amendments before I close that public hearing. Still nothing? All right. I'll declare the public hearing closed now. I believe the time is 7:36 according to my phone. All right, moving into our resolutions, ordinances, and agreements, we have nothing up for adoption on Monday, or excuse me, for introduction, but Monday night we'll be looking to adopt the Meads Crossing Developer Rights and Responsibilities Agreement. Are there any comments from council regarding the amendments to Meads Crossing DARA? All right. Again, that's up for adoption Monday evening. Next, we have Resolution 2019-14, our monthly water allocation, this one being for December 2019. Is there any comments or input from council regarding that resolution? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. Mr. Weeper, do you have a city manager report for us this evening?
Sure, just touch on a couple things here. On the capital projects and capital equipment, we'll have police department up as our next area for discussion. Chief Etzler and I have had some conversations already, and hopefully we will have both capital equipment and capital projects before you in time for your January meeting. If we're able to, we'll get it out a little bit before the packets so that you have a little longer to review and digest that as well. With regard to the Syrian property, the one we've been talking about trying to acquire right-of-way because they were seeking ag preservation, they have had a change of heart and have decided to hang on to the property for the long haul, so to speak, and would like to stay in the growth area for the property. They think that eventually it would be a property that could be annexed into the city and developed. So they are not pursuing ag preservation any longer, so that's not going to be on the report going forward. We'll be having conversations about that as we get back into updating our comprehensive plan and have growth area discussions. Update on the O'Brien Bridge. Footers poured on the north side, and the foundation work is ongoing for the portion of the weir wall that's going to be the bridge abutment on that side. Footer pouring has begun on the south side, on the Sarah's Choice 3 side, and there are a couple photos in your packet that I just included just so if you haven't been out there, it's not going to be a big bridge in the scheme of things, but for Taneytown, when you look at the scale of a person next to the bridge abutment, it's a lot of concrete in there. So I just thought that would be helpful for just a little perspective if somebody hasn't managed to get out there and have a look. This will be under old business, but just touch base real quick. There's a proposal for architectural services. We talked a little bit about this last month, but I did misspeak. I'm not able to authorize it without your approval because it does exceed $10,000. So that'll be on in old business. And lastly, the community meeting that we had on the Trevanian Terrace project wasn't real well attended. Just maybe 5 residents showed up for it. And a couple of them had suggestions and thoughts that they contributed to the county staff who's doing the working with the engineer on it. But all in all, it was received well. I don't know that anybody was, jumping for joy over it, but there weren't any real concerns expressed either. I think just the idea that it's going to be a change is probably making people a little bit nervous, but we talked about that the slopes are going to be very shallow and things like that, and that seemed to put people's minds at ease. The idea of a fence on the elementary school side of the pond did come up, and that's something we'll talk to the school about when we get a little farther into things. So that's about it for me, unless folks have questions.
Any questions regarding the city manager report?
Including the other departmental reports?
Not yet.
Okay.
No, didn't even.
All right. Ms. Weeper, do you have anything to add for department reports in addition to what we've been presented? You're good. Council, do you have any questions regarding departmental reports?
Just one, and it's just possible that I may have simply overlooked it, but is there an update on the gazebo?
It's on the next,
It's on,
it's under,
it's on, oh, okay, it's
The
on.
structure itself is complete. Building inspector has given that the okay.
wait a minute,
I may only have the one. I apologize.
he'll tell you, it's in
We're
there.
clear to use it for the tree lighting. What we have to do still is we are supposed to provide a hard surface accessible path to the gazebo. So Sparks at Play has offered to, that was not part of the bid spec, but we will be meeting with them on site tomorrow, and hopefully because of the delays and other issues we've had with the project, they're going to, I think, they may help us out with the path. I don't know the extent to which they will do that, but we'll find out tomorrow. But again, we are good to use it. We checked with the county. They're okay with us putting it in use and having it used for the tree lighting.
Thank you very much.
All right. Any other questions on departmental reports from the council? All right. Moving on, Mr. Gullah, do you have anything to add to the legal report that you presented to us?
Two things, just to highlight. One is the Frazier versus the City of Taneytown matter has finally been concluded. The arguments, as you know, were held in the highest court in Maryland, the Court of Appeals, in October, and they issued a speedy opinion for them, which was issued about 10 days ago, affirming the lower court's case. And you recall that the lower court, which is the Court of Special Appeals, affirmed the trial court's case, and the trial court ruled in favor of the city. So the importance of the case is not just for the city, that the city won and then everything was handled. There was never an issue that there were technical violations, and the technical violations were merely technical in nature. And what the Court of Appeals basically set the law of the land with our case now. So in Maryland, the law of the land is technical violations will not allow for fines to be imposed on governments. They have to be knowing. So you have to knowingly violate it. So you know what the law is and you do it different. And they found that none of our violations were knowing violations. So that's a positive. It puts at the end of a 2-year saga and puts that to rest. So we're all happy about it, and I'm sure you're happy about it as well. The second issue isn't as glamorous, of course. It deals with our police department, and as you know, I passed out to you all a contract. We're doing recruiting, obviously, for new positions, and this issue was probably something that happened 20 years ago. It was in vogue, and it hasn't been worked since. But the bottom line is, when we pay for recruits to go to the academy, we not only pay for their fee to go to the academy, we pay them as city employees to go to the academy, and that's a 9-month process. And there's equipment involved, and the equipment is tailored to them, the bulletproof vests, the uniforms, and things like that. And the issue that usually happens, or it doesn't usually happen, but we're concerned with, and it happened years ago of all departments, is somebody comes out of the academy with a certification for a police officer. They work here to get field trained. They have their blue card then that they're actually a certified police officer, and then they look for work somewhere else that pays more, because you can transfer as a lateral because you now have the background. And of course, we've spent all the time and money to train them, and then they leave and we're still in the lurch. So what we want to do is twofold. This contract that new recruits will sign has to do two things. One, it makes them pay the city back for the costs involved in putting them through the academy. if they leave within a 5-year period of service. And it's a step down, so if they leave in year 1, it's 100%, year 2 is 80%, and so on and so forth. So it ensures that the city is at least reimbursed for that, but really it acts as a deterrent. We want 5 years of service, just like the military. When they train you up, they expect to get the 8 years of service out of you for that training. And this hopefully will encourage people to come to Taneytown, stay in Taneytown before they put us, go to other places. So what I need you to do on Monday night is I need you to just ratify that. That contract's already been put into play. It's already being used, but I want the city to ratify it so there's no question that it is city policy that this is what has to happen. So I'll have Clara make sure she puts that under the resolutions, ordinance, agreements, that you'll just ratify the contracts. And that's all I have, unless you have something specific for me.
Are there any questions for Mr. Gullo regarding his report that can be discussed in public? All right, moving forward, we have nothing in old business, which will put us into new business. Monthly financial report in your packets. Are there any comments regarding that report? All right, that'll be up for approval on Monday. Next, we have our accounts payables. Any questions from council regarding those? All right, also up for approval. Next, in new business, architectural services for the city office. Mr. Weeprick did discuss this briefly, that the total does come in higher than what the city manager can approve on their own. So he'll be seeking council's approval on that figure Monday night. Is there any additional detail you want to provide to us? All right, are there any questions from council regarding that for Monday evening? Okay, if you do have specific questions in the meantime, I encourage you to contact Mr. Weeprick regarding that. Moving on to public comment for agenda items. Anything that was listed on the agenda and discussed this evening, we'd be happy to hear public comment on. Anyone from the public like to comment? Okay. Next, I'm going to ask the council that I would like to adjourn the open meeting, go into closed session. I will read closing statement, and then we will entertain a motion to go into closed session. If it is approved by council going into closed session, we'll have a brief recess while we clear the room, and then we will then convene into in closed session. Wednesday, December 4th, 2019, the time being 7:48 p.m. In accordance to the Maryland Open Meetings Act, Title 10, Governmental Procedures, Subtitle 5, Meetings, Section 3305B. This meeting will be closed only to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom it has jurisdiction, or any other personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals. Following is a listing of topics to be discussed, the authority in the Open Meetings Act for having such discussion in closed session, and citation to the applicable provisions of the Act. Citation 305B1, topic, the mayor's nomination of city manager. Reason being discussion regarding personnel decisions, including the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance requires a closed session as provided by the Act. Hearing such, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Is there any discussion before we have the vote? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor of adjourning the open meeting and going into closed session, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed say nay. All right, our workshop is adjourned. We will reconvene in 6 minutes to a closed session. Thank you all.